Last week, when I spoke with you about what's happening in this country, in this moment, and the rise of authoritarianism, I ended by sharing a few specific things that scholars on authoritarianism have lifted up as crucial in these times. Now, earlier, Nick shared some great things that we can do to help ourselves manage our feelings when we get overwhelmed or scared, especially in times like those we're in. They also shared Mr. Rogers and Daniel Tiger's reminders to look for the helpers and their invitation to be those helpers. Today, I want to delve a little deeper into these and how our Unitarian Universalist faith calls us to be helpers by engaging with the things that scholars say will help us counter rising authoritarianism. Yes, this is part 2. So those things that I listed last week, I don't expect you to remember all of them. The first was voting. It is absolutely crucial that we protect access to voting, that we vote, and that we help others vote. While the actions of some of our elected leaders are symptoms of underlying problems in this country, they are also undoubtedly deepening our slide into authoritarianism and white Christian nationalism. And so it is crucial that we protect elections and that we vote. Our value of justice calls us to work to create diverse, multicultural, beloved communities where all feel welcome and can thrive. One way that we do this is by promoting the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process within our congregations and in society at large, as well as by working to create a community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. Some of our most fundamental values and principles for our religion call us to actively protect access to voting, to vote, and to engage with our political system. This is very true at our national and state levels, but it is also true of our local political system. We can engage with this not only every year or every few years when elections come around, but also on a regular basis. Here in Iowa City, but also in Ames and Dubuque, we can support the good work that our local governments are doing to protect our rights and develop systems for those who are most vulnerable in the ways that we best can. We can learn about what they are doing, and we can support that good work. We can encourage them, as well as working to change things when we're concerned about particular actions, such as increasing surveillance. There is so much our local governments can do for climate, economic, racial, LGBTQ+, and social justice, as well as to create systems of care even when we are experiencing important protections and liberties being gutted from the state and national levels. Here in Iowa City, there is so much, and in Johnson County, there is so much that is positive that is being done. I know less about Ames and Dubuque, but I know that there are things that you can do there too to help foster resiliency. There are many, many ways that we can use our power to act at our local levels for more justice, liberty, peace, and equity. This is a good in and of itself. It helps us develop programs that other cities and towns can use or refine things from other places, and it also helps build our muscles for engaging at state and national levels. What's more, it helps us develop the relationships and skills that we need to protect the vote generally. Now that next thing, that second thing that scholars of authoritarianism tell us we can do to help counter rising authoritarianism is to talk about what's happening and help ourselves and others maintain a sense of what normal political discourse and action look like in a healthy, pluralistic democracy. Because, as we discussed last week, one of the key tools of authoritarianism, white Christian nationalism, and fascism is shifting what's called the Overton window of acceptable public opinion, speech, and action into areas that further normalize discrimination, hate, scapegoating, and authoritarianism, that make racialized asylum policies, mass deportations, transphobia, discriminatory healthcare and education, and erasing history, all things that were once unthinkable, more acceptable to the American public, to us. We need to help ourselves and each other remember the humanity, the inherent worth and dignity of every person, and to live compassion. We need to help ourselves and each other remember what normal checks and balances on power look like and how the norms of 250 years are quickly eroding. We need to talk about what corruption looks like. We need to remember that while some things look like they're adhering to the letter of the law, they're actually fundamentally at odds with the spirit of transparency, accountability, and popular representation. We need to work together to create trust in how healthy democracies function, and we need to help ourselves and each other remember what our values and ethics call us to. We're called to engage in this work by our value of equity that declares that every person is inherently worthy and has the right to flourish with dignity, love, and compassion, as well as by our principles that call us to promote justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, that call us to free and responsible searches for truth and meaning, and that call us to encourage ourselves and each other to spiritual growth. As Bishop William J. Barber II and Jonathan Wilson Hartgrove wrote in an email yesterday to movement leaders about how we're shifting the moral narrative. When we teach moral fusion movements, we ask our students to note how low points in our nation's past often served to catalyze the moral movements that pushed America forward to a more perfect union. Even amid terrible retrogression, a shift is happening that opens the way to new and better possibilities. In opposition to Trump's big, ugly bill, two of the most powerful speeches ever given from the floor of the U.S. Senate and House quoted directly from the language that we have been using in our moral movement for the past decade. We celebrate that this message is breaking through and shaping the public narrative of moral opposition. To conclude his 25-hour speech that broke Strom Thurmond's record for the longest filibuster in U.S. history, Senator Cory Booker quoted our moral movement when he said, "This is a moral moment. It's not left or right, it's right or wrong." Moral messaging has the power to galvanize a coalition broader than political parties. Just last week, when Leader Jeffries held the floor for the longest speech in the history of the U.S. House of Representatives, he turned to a moral framing at the end and talked about the hypocrisy of those who pray on Sundays, but then come to Congress to pray, P-R-E-Y, on the most vulnerable. Yes. This is a prophetic critique of Christian nationalism that comes from the ancient texts that we have taught and preached for years. The point of prophetic proclamation is a message that echoes through the community and shifts the collective conscience of a people. Speaking truth to power is not just about speaking. It's also about inspiring leaders, that means y'all, out there and online. It's also about inspiring leaders to take stronger and more radical stances rooted in love for the saving of the heart and the soul of the country. Bishop Barber and Jonathan continue. Last weekend, The Guardian profiled our work to build a moral movement to counter the immoral actions of those leading our government. This article raises the question that every generation has asked of moral movements. Can moral fusion really work to stop those who use and abuse raw power? This is the same question the abolitionists faced as they organized an underground railroad and built opposition to chattel slavery in the 19th century. Our UU ancestors were important parts of those movements, challenging slavery in the courts, in the streets, and at the ballot box. It's the question that the Freedom Riders of 1961 faced when they risked their lives to get on buses and ride through the South, sitting together as the equals that God and the law told them that they were. Again, our UU ancestors were powerful forces in those movements. Can such nonviolent acts of resistance really make a difference in the face of brutal abuses of power? Y'all know the answer. Yeah, thank you. The answer to this question, Bishop Barber says, has never been a philosophical argument. It is instead the collective action of people in every generation who do their part to build a moral movement. And so I ask you, sitting out there today, what is the conversation that you want to have about rising authoritarianism or white Christian nationalism? What is the moral voice that you want to bring to that conversation? Who do you want to talk with? And what are some of the values, principles, and ethics that you want to bring up? I wanted to give you a couple minutes to think about this, and you know what? I'm going to give you a minute to think about this, and maybe talk with somebody if that is how you process best. And then I'm going to call you back, and I'm going to finish with the last couple points, because I think it's going to help to think about some things and talk about some things. So as you think about being a moral voice, about being a leader in countering authoritarianism, and the questions, the conversations we need to have, what do you want to bring to that? Think, even talk, and if you're online, maybe find somebody or write some things down. All right. I hope that little minute and a half of conversation whet your appetite to keep talking about this, because that's so crucial. Because that third thing that those scholars of authoritarianism tell us that we need to do to counter rising authoritarianism is that we need to build and become part of coalitions. We need to mobilize ourselves as part of a network of congregations and other groups that are committed to interdependence, pluralism, equity, and compassion. We know that we are stronger together, so we need to build on that. This is something that this congregation has been doing as we work in formal partnerships with groups like Johnson County Interfaith Coalition, Iowa Interfaith Power and Light, now known as the Iowa Faith and Climate Network, the Multicultural Development Center of Iowa, and the Iowa Unitarian Universalist Witness and Action Network. It's also part of the work that we've been doing by working to develop deeper partnerships with our monthly community partner agencies and other interfaith groups. You can learn more about this work and get engaged by stopping by the Justice Table during coffee hour on second Sundays here at UUS. If you're in Ames or Dubuque, I hope your Justice leads will drop some information in the chat about how you can get involved there. And you can also connect with the Unitarian Universalist Association's Side with Love campaign, which is linked in today's bibliography, along with other great resources. This work of faith-based community organizing needs all of us to play different roles according to our skills, our passions, and our life circumstances. At General Assembly last month, I had the opportunity to listen to an amazing talk by Deepa Iyer, who wrote the UU Common Read for this coming congregational year. The book, which is called Social Change Now, a guide for connection and reflection, applies an ecosystem approach to the justice work we do. It gives us a roadmap for how each of us can play different roles in justice work and for understanding and choosing the roles that our congregations play as part of coalitions. Because everyone can't be doing the same work, and everyone has a unique role to play, whether it's as part of a congregation or as part of a coalition. I'm very excited about reading this book with you all in this coming year and discerning how it can help us broaden and deepen our justice work. I'm also excited about continuing to work together to build community within and beyond our congregation and to continue to develop the various communities within our larger congregational community. I'm excited by the skill building we have been and that we continue to do as part of developing UUS as a place of belonging and radical welcome for people who are diverse in culture, experience, and theology. You can engage in this by taking our self-paced course, Responding to the Anti-Trans Movement, which delves into some of the stuff I talked about last week in greater detail, our Mosaic Anti-Racism class this fall, or our Trans Inclusion in Congregations class this winter and spring. You can get in touch with Nick Kaplan to find out how to participate in any of those classes. As we were reminded at General Assembly, people join people, not causes. People want to be claimed by groups where they find belonging and hope. Responding to our own needs for this and the deep need of the community around us, as well as the powerful calls of our values of transformation and generosity, are why we have been and continue to engage in radical welcome work. To be part of this, you can join our Radical Welcome, Diversity, and Inclusion team by talking with Kwanda Hood, or you can get involved with membership or hospitality by talking with Victoria Hewitt. As we do this work, we also need to remember that joy and rest and spiritual practices and sustenance are also part of resistance. We are a long-haul people, here to do long-haul work. And so we must celebrate joy. We must cultivate joy, celebration, appreciation, rest, and other spiritual practices that nourish our bodies, minds, hearts, and spirits. What works for one person isn't necessarily what works for another. So I hope you'll look at and engage with the various opportunities here as the new congregational year begins, or talk with staff or teams about how to develop something that doesn't exist yet. And so, I come back to these words from Reverend Dr. Sophia Betancourt, our JUULiowa president, that Marcia shared earlier. In challenging times like these, our faith calls us to find strength in each other. We are a sanctuary people, a people who aim to create safety for both body and soul within our communal spaces. We are also a faithful people, drawn to communal care not just by our ethics, but by our historic religious tradition. Our congregations and communities are rare places where people can be vulnerable enough to build trust and capacity for resistance. And this is why, as Unitarian Universalists, we are called to build and sustain community. It is the greatest tool we have for resilience. There are so many things we can do and are already doing to meet this moment, to create sanctuary, to be a beacon. It gives me so much hope each and every day to know what a difference we are making in this community and to see what we are continuing to work towards. May we continue to do this work together for the long haul. So may it be. Blessed be. Amen.